Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. So, spoiler season for Kamigawa Neon Dynasty has started off with an absolute bang with some fantastic cards like the Reality Chip, which very well might be the weirdest card of all time. I mean, okay, I'll just read the type line for you. A legendary artifact, creature, equipment, jellyfish. Yes, they fit all that on there. And also today, and okay, probably a lot more surprising than an artifact, equipment, jellyfish, is the fact that we now have a Phyrexian Planeswalker with Tamiyo completed Sage. So, yeah, Phyrexian Planeswalker and Phyrexian Mana are back, and Simic Phyrexian Mana. Gross. But this episode actually is a follow-up to yesterday's episode where I talked about an absolutely potential spoiler with an overpowered card that was Jin-Gitaxias, and my question on that episode was, is this spoiler real? Well, luckily for us today, we got the actual Jin-Gitaxias card, so we can see, well, what might be different and what might be the same, and what might be incredibly scary. I mean, again, this is a Phyrexian Praetor. And yeah, okay, really quick before we actually jump in the episode, a huge thank you to Eddie for all your fantastic comments and feedback during spoiler season. I absolutely love our discussions. And I also love that I can tell everyone to actually blame you if anything goes wrong in the episode, because as everyone knows, it's always Eddie's fault and not mine if anything goes wrong. So now with all that said, let's jump into it. So yesterday we got somewhat of a grainy photo of, well, this actual card, and there was some debate as to whether this Phyrexian language Jin-Gitaxias was an actual card, and well, it turns out it is. Obviously, the things that we can read on it are that it's a 5/5 and that it costs 5 blue, but I do not speak, write, or read Phyrexian, so I could not translate any of it for you. My apologies on that. Now, the translation that was bouncing around on the internet was accurate in some ways and inaccurate in others. And actually, really quick, I just want to show off another version of this card because, wow, they keep showing off a lot of different versions of these cards these days. And yeah, now if you really want a Jin-Gitaxias Progress Tyrant, you can get it in this neon version as well. But for this episode's sake, let's move on to the just regular version, okay? So, regular version, Jin-Gitaxias Progress Tyrant is of course a 5/5 Phyrexian Praetor for 5 blue. It says, whenever you cast an artifact, instant, or sorcery spell, copy that spell. You may choose to target for the copy. This ability triggers only once each turn, and of course a copy of a permanent spell becomes a token. So this is a huge effect, and we'll get back to it here in a bit, but first up, let's read the rest of the card. Whenever an opponent casts an artifact, instant, or sorcery spell, counter that spell. This ability triggers only once each turn. So if you saw yesterday's episode, I'm not going to hash out every single similarity or difference. There are definitely some here, but yeah, an incredibly powerful card. Again, like all the other Praetors essentially, it has one massive upside for the actual player and some massive downsides for the opponents. The upside obviously being that you essentially get double the value out of your artifacts, instants, and sorceries. Oh, okay, well, only once each turn. But still, doubling up on at least one of those in a turn is huge, and there are ways to kind of get around that or take more advantage of it, but we'll talk about those here in a bit. And of course, keep in mind that when you're doubling up on artifacts, like it says, essentially make a token copy of that artifact, and yeah, there are plenty of ways to get a ton of value out of that, and also there are ways to use and abuse those tokens too. Yeah, this is just a very exciting benefit that you get by having this commander in play. And of course, it wouldn't be Jin-Gitaxias if it wasn't oppressive as well. because now your opponents essentially are going to have one spell countered a turn, whether that be an artifact, instant, or sorcery. It's going to counter something. Okay, I guess I should be a bit more specific again. Obviously, you can get around, this countering by casting a creature or an enchantment or a planeswalker. You can get around it that way. And also, keep in mind, this says this ability triggers only once each turn. So that means that you're not going to be countering multiple opponents on the same turn. So if one opponent attempts to Path to Exile Jin-Gitaxias, well, that's going to get countered. But then if another one tries to do so as well, that one's going to go through. It's going to counter one total spell from your opponents on each turn. Now, that might be more specific, but it's still an incredibly powerful thing. I mean, your opponents during their own turns, if they want to play an artifact, an instant, or a sorcery, they're probably going to have to play multiple spells. Because if your opponent tries to just play one of those on their turn and no other, of those spells have been played yet on that turn, they're just getting that spell countered and it's just a waste of a spell. So they kind of have to burn a spell in order to actually get something else through. So yeah, again, as with all the other Praetors, this is an oppressive commander with massive upside for you, and it's absolutely devastating to your opponents. You essentially get double the value on some of your spells, and your opponent's value is kind of halved in a way. Regardless, if you do want to lose your friends and build around this commander, just kidding, but seriously, I don't know. Anyways, let's talk about some cards that you might want to consider. First up, yeah, this commander has a really high converted mana cost at 7 mana, so you're gonna want to ramp very quickly and very often. So of course you can utilize cards like Soul Ring, which just costs 1 and taps for 2, and if you haven't heard of Soul Ring, welcome to Commander. Or if you want to tap for even more, how about Tyrant Dynamo, an artifact that costs 4 and taps for 3. But again, Soul Ring and Tyrant Dynamo just tap for colorless, which is pretty much fine in a monocolor deck like this one, but hey, if you really want that blue mana, go for Gilded Lotus as well, an artifact that costs 5, so 1 more than Tyrant Dynamo, but taps to add 3 mana of any one color. And again, dumping a ton of mana rocks into this deck really isn't a bad thing, because even after you ramp enough to get your commander out, you get double the amount of value from your mana rocks from then on whenever you're casting them. Okay, again, as long as that's the spell that you're actually doubling up on, let's say. So yeah, you've already got Jin-Gitaxias in play, and you've got a Soul Ring in your hand. That's actually a really good thing, because now you just pay 1 mana, you get a Soul Ring, and you get a copy of it. So you just basically, ramped 4? You get 4 extra mana now. You can tap for 3 more mana than you put into that 1 mana Soul Ring. So you can get to absurd amounts of mana very quickly with this kind of a commander and this kind of a deck. And of course, some other artifacts you might want to consider, and a huge thank you to Eddie for pointing these out: Psionic Resonator and Lithiform Engine. Psionic Resonator is an artifact that costs 2, and it has pay 2, tap, copy target, triggered ability. You control, you may choose targets for the copy. Jin-Gitaxias copying one of your spells, whether that's an artifact, instant, or a sorcery, is a triggered ability, so have fun copying that to get even more copies. Oh, and also again, Psionic Resonator, of course, if Jin-Gitaxias is already in play, can copy this for you so you can get 2 of them to make even more copies. Now, Lithiform Engine, unfortunately, is legendary, so making a copy of it's not going to help you, but again, like Psionic Resonator, it can help you copy other things. It has pay 2, tap, copy target, activator, triggered ability. You control, you may choose targets for the copy. Pay 3, tap, copy target, insert or sorcery spell. You control, you may choose targets for the copy. Or pay 4 and tap, copy target, permanent spell you control. So basically, make a bunch of copies of pretty much whatever you want. And another card that Eddie pointed out that could be very effective with this commander is something like Deadeye Navigator. It has Soul Bond, and as long as it's paired with another creature each of those creatures has, pay 1 in blue, exile this creature, and then return to the battlefield under your control. Basically, even though Jin-Gitaxias has, this ability triggers only once each turn, if you blink Jin-Gitaxias, it's like, hey, I'm a brand new thing, I'm a brand new Jin-Gitaxias, and I can trigger again. So essentially just having to pay 2 mana to blink Jin-Gitaxias to be able to copy more things, that's definitely going to be worth it in the vast majority of situations. And of course, Deadeye Navigator is just an absolutely brokenly awesome card with a lot of things, but yeah. And speaking of basically broken cards, let's talk about extra turn spells like Time Warp, Expropriate, and Walk the Aeons. Even if Jin-Gitaxias is just copying one of your spells in a turn, again because you maybe don't have Lithiform Engine out, well, make it count with an extra turn spell. Time Warp says target player takes an extra turn after this one. Expropriate is a brutal card. It says, starting with you, each player votes for time or money. For each time vote, take an extra turn for this one. For each money vote, choose a permanent owned by the voter and gain control of it. Exile, expropriate. And then Walk the Aeons has sacrifice, buy back 3 lands. Target player takes an extra turn for this one. Regardless, what basically is going to happen is that even with just Time Walk, you're going to be getting 2 extra turns because Jin-Gitaxias is going to copy this. And that generally is going to be enough for you to win, or at least set yourself up to do so. Expropriate is basically an I win the game card on its own, but sure, let's get 2 copies of it, basically letting you steal some of your opponent's permanents and get an extra turn or more, depending on what they pick, as well. And then in this situation, Walk the Aeons actually might be the most brutal out of all of these spells, because again, it's got buyback, sacrifice 3 islands. So essentially, when you cast this, you can sacrifice 3 islands to get it back into your hand. So you get 2 extra turns, then this is back in your hand to do it again. Now you might be saying, well, we are losing islands, but again, with this commander, that really doesn't matter all that much because you can just keep doubling up on your artifacts and you're going to have access to a ton of mana. So even if you just cast this once, twice, 3 times, whatever it is, that's going to be enough extra turns to win. And speaking of winning, of course, with all that mana that you're making, you can afford to cast Blightsteal Colossus, an 11/11 golem with Trample, Infect, and Indestructible for 12 mana. And of course, because it's an artifact, you get to copy it with Jin-Gitaxias, and your opponents are going to be very scared, and eventually, okay, not too far into the future, they're going to be gone as well thanks to poison counters. Because what's scarier than 1 Blightsteal Colossus? 2, when there's also a, hard counter commander on the board as well. And you definitely are going to want to include things to protect Jin-Gitaxias because you're going to have a huge target on its back, so utilize cards like Darksteel Plate, Lightning Greaves, and Stubborn Denial. Darksteel Plate is of course an artifact, so you're going to get 2 of it if it's your first artifact cast in the turn, and yeah, it says Indestructible, equipped creature has Indestructible, and it's got Equip 2. Or there's Lightning Greaves, equipped creature has Haste and Shroud for Equip 0, so yeah, getting 2 of these, not a bad thing, so put it on Jin-Gitaxias and whatever other fun thing you want. Maybe a Blightsteal Colossus, that could be fun. And of course, a fantastic counterspell like Stubborn Denial can be great since it's so low to the ground. It says counter target non-creature spell at 6 control phase 1, but it has Ferocious if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, counter that spell instead. And of course, Jin-Gitaxias has 5 power, so we meet that requirement with just our command around. So on top of your commander essentially having the potential to counter 1 problematic spell in a turn, you obviously are going to want other ways to protect your commander and counter other things too. Next up, when it comes to Jin-Gitaxias' potential in the 99 of a deck, the first commander that definitely came to my mind, and I believe Eddie's as well, was Brutalclad Telcor Engineer. Brutalclad is a 4/4 artificer that has creature tokens you control have haste. In the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 2/1 blue mirror artifact creature token. Then you may choose a token you control. If you do, each other token you control becomes a copy of that token. So Jin-Gitaxias does a fantastic thing to help Brutalclad out. Again, it basically says, hey, if you cast an artifact, I'll just give you a token of that. So a lot of your powerful artifacts in that deck, you can then just use Brutalclad's combat trigger to turn all of them into the exact same powerful thing. And also, on the other hand, just overall, Jin-Gitaxias helping you make more and more tokens is a great way for Brutalclad to transform all things into whatever you want. Next up, another commander that Eddie pointed out was a very powerful one with Kinnan Bonder Prodigy. Kinnan is a 2/2 human druid that just costs green-blue, so yeah, go figure. Eddie pointed out a Simic commander. Anyways, whenever you tap a non-land permanent for mana, add 1 mana of any type that permanent produced. Basically, hey, your mana rocks now tap for more, and again, Jin-Gitaxias can make you a lot of mana rocks, which can help you tap for a lot. And of course, by paying 5 green-blue, look at the top 5 cards of your library, you may put a non-human creature card from among them out of the battlefield, put the rest of them on your library in a random order. Jin-Gitaxias is, of course, not a human, so yeah, have fun hitting that off the top, and your opponents are going to be absolutely horrified when you do so. But yet another one that Eddie pointed out that you might want to consider in a similar way to like a Deadeye Navigator, Brago King Eternal. It has, whenever it deals combat damage to a player, exile any number of target non-land permanents you control, then return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control. So Brago can essentially blink a lot of things, and again, like I mentioned earlier, blinking Jin-Gitaxias essentially says, hey, you can have that copy effect trigger an additional time. And of course, in Brago decks, there are more ways than just Brago to blink things, so you might be able to get even more value out of that. And the final commander that I want to bring up is, of course, Jin-Gitaxias, Core Auger, the original Jin-Gitaxias. It's a 5/4 Praetor with Flash that costs 8 blue, and it says at the beginning of your end step, draw 7 cards. Each opponent's maximum hand size is reduced by 7. So what's more brutal and oppressive than one Jin-Gitaxias in play? How about 2? One of which makes it really hard for your opponents to ever have anything in their hand, and the other of which just makes it hard for your opponents to cast things without them just getting countered. And of course, one draws you a ton of cards, and the other one copies your things. Yeah, having both of those in play is deadly. But now as this quick take is wrapping up, it's time for me to give you my final thoughts on Jin-Gitaxias Progress Tyrant. I am really excited to see the actual version of this card, and yeah, this thing is still pretty brutal. Being able to double up on your instant sorceries and even artifacts is a huge amount of value, and also, of course, on the other hand, throwing a giant wrench into your opponent's plans when it comes to them actually casting spells. That's going to cause some problems. They're going to have to burn through a lot of spells to actually just get to do what they want to do throughout the game. So yeah, obviously, I am not surprised to see yet another oppressive Phyrexian Praetor that is just absolutely brutal to play against. And yeah, Jin-Gitaxias Progress Tyrant definitely fits the bill. That being said, if you do choose to play this commander, I can pretty much guarantee you're going to have a massive target on your back, so be prepared for that. And also, of course, be prepared for even more quick takes and spoilers on this channel, so stay tuned. And with that, this show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one.